John Chapman, or better known as Johnny Appleseed, was born in Boston in 1775. He loved to go out into the fields and forests and play and make friends with the animals as a child, and as a teenager he became a missionary and would go around to the local Indians and try to convert them to Christianity. While he was doing that, he would teach them Aesop's fables and preach the Bible. An angel came to him one day and said, "Johnny, you need to go across the field and spread apple seeds across the American frontier." Johnny did just that. He went from Massachusetts to New York, Pennsylvania to Ohio and Indiana and all across the Midwest, where he would build fences and around fields and then plant apple seeds in them so that when settlers came, they would have a field and food for them to eat. All they would have to do is build a house. As they were traveling, he came upon a friend, and his friend told him that he was a lot like St. Francis of Assisi. Basically, he lived a very simple life, and he loved to be with animals. So Johnny Appleseed would never buy new clothes. He would only wear a saucepan on his head. He wouldn't wear like hats or anything, and he never wore shoes or socks because he thought those were way too complex for the world he was living and what he was trying to do. He then, as he was traveling even further, came upon a family who lived in a log house. There they were talking about books, and the family had loved reading and writing and all that stuff, and Johnny Appleseed gave them one of his books and said that when he would return later in a couple years, all they would have to do is return it to them. This was the start of his library, where he would eventually give pages of his books to all sorts of people so that they could learn how to read and interpret books. He also, as he was traveling, came across many Indians and settlers of which he loved to make friends with, and he loved to help people as well. So there were a few times that the Indians would come and try to attack the settlers and the villagers, and he hated seeing that. So for instance, the first time it happened, he was at a village, and upon the village frontier, a group of enemy Indians came in, and they basically were going to destroy and kill everybody in the village. The soldiers and the military fort was 30 miles away, and the villagers had no way to get to the fort. So Johnny Appleseed started on his way and made it all the way to the fort, where when he got there he expressed how the villagers were in danger, and the soldiers got on their horses and traveled all the way back to the village fort and fought the Indians and eventually succeeded and won, for none of the villagers were harmed, none of the settlers were harmed or anything like that. A few years later, he was traveling again, and he came upon another Indian village where he heard the Indian chief say that he was going to attack the settlers upon the waterfront of the river. He ran back to the village as fast as he could and told all the settlers that they needed to get out, hide in the forest. So that's precisely what they did. They all ran, and nobody ended up being hurt, for the Indians could not find them. He also, as he was going along, loved to run into animals and help the ones that he thought were hurt, or make friends with the ones that were just kind of wandering around the American frontier. As he was traveling, the first one he came upon was a deer. The deer was crying out in the forest, so he went to find the deer and found that the deer had broken its leg. He stayed with him, helped it heal, until the deer was finally able to get up and walk away. He told the deer, "My dear friend, you can go along and run, play in the frontier once more." He also came into a family of raccoons one time. There was a snowstorm outside, so he was trying to find a place to stay for the night. He came upon a cave. He looked in there, and the raccoons basically says to him, "Hey, we're living here, this is my family," all that kind of stuff. So instead of trying to go into the cave and take the home away from them, he ended up sleeping outside just so that the raccoons had a place to stay and he didn't interrupt or inhabit their home. Basically, Johnny Appleseed was a legend he's known for his kindness, genuineness, lending books to people in need, and spreading apple trees across the American frontier, which eventually helped them succeed in life. He is remembered by many American people as they eat an apple. Every time they do, they think of the first person that comes to mind is Johnny Appleseed.